guys, on the bench today we've got the brand new Mojave Grom, and this thing looks absolutely awesome. This is by far the largest and most detailed Grom we've gotten so far, and with that extra size comes extra weight. I'm really curious to see how the stock drivetrain handles it. Underneath this beautiful body, which is removed by just pushing two buttons, we can see we have a very familiar drivetrain here with the brushed 2-in-1 system, as well as the included 1400 milliamp hour 2S battery. This system's not going to be staying in here long because later in the video we're going to be ripping all this out and putting a budget brushless system in here, which I think is going to be a lot more appropriate for the size of this car. But before we do that, we need to make sure this system's up to the task of the size and weight of this vehicle, as well as making sure the rest of the drivetrain can handle it. As compared to the Granite Grom, you can see just how much longer this truck is. Due to having more narrow arms, its track width is actually quite a bit smaller, and even with the larger tires on the Granite Grom, this thing feels way heavier. Since under the hood this truck is basically the same as the other Groms, we're not going to go too far into the drivetrain, but I do want to make sure they have the updated front and rear differentials, so let's pull one of these diffs out of here. Like I said, later in the video, we're going to be doing an ultra budget brushless upgrade on this truck, but let me know down in the comments if you want to see an ultimate brushless upgrade done, because I'd like to see how this Mojave can handle some serious power. These thoughtful touches are really, really nice. As you can see, Arrma gave us holes so we can reach all the way through and get these screws out without having to take the bumper off. We've also got those holes down here at the bottom. And then with just 4 more screws on the underside, the entire bumper and differential cover comes off really, really easily. As you can see here, the output cups on this differential are the standard plastic ones that we've seen in the other vehicles. We are going to be upgrading these as part of that budget brushless install, but let's make sure we've got those metal gears inside. And opening this little differential up, we can see that yes, they do have the metal spider gears. However, they still have the plastic side gears. This does make the differential quite a bit stronger, but not nearly as strong as the all-metal oil-filled differential that we'll be upgrading this to in the next video. And there we go, we've got that all back together. Even though these are grease-filled, these differentials do feel pretty smooth, and they are fairly durable. Will it be able to handle our budget brushless upgrade? You'll just have to wait and see for that. Just about everything in the middle here is going to be familiar. We've got the same cooling fan that we had on the Typhon. They did add a nice little foam block here to help keep this battery into the longer tray. And you can see the pins that hold the body in on both sides. And that body's really nice, though it is quite heavy because it does have a full internal cage. This cage might limit the height that we have for putting upgrades in here. I'll definitely be interested to see how much we can get away with. We might end up having to cut a couple of these ribs out when we go for the overkill brushless install. You can see there is a nice little vent here for cooling in the front, and then it's kind of open in the back to let heat exhaust out. This car has a unique front bumper that goes underneath the body and a unique rear bumper that sits against the external bumper on the body itself. Taking a closer look at these tires, they are branded D-Boots Fortress, and they do have a fairly familiar Fortress tread. These are pretty thick feeling tires, and they definitely feel way more stout than the quite a bit larger Granite tires. That's a pretty striking size difference on those wheels too. Of course, that's just for show because they're pretty similar on the back. And underneath that, we have the same familiar plastic suspension, plastic hexes, and plastic outdrives with steel shafts. These shocks also look very familiar, and I expect them to do just fine. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get this battery charged up, and we're going to do that using this included USB-C charger. Unlike previous builds, I am going to keep using this battery when we go brushless, and to do that, I actually got a pack of EC2 connectors. That should save a few bucks in the conversion, and I'm really curious to see how this battery holds up to brushless power. While that's charging, let's quickly go over the remote. This is the SLT2 transmitter. It's fairly decent. It does allow you to get 50, 75, and 100% power, and has basic trim adjustment. Overall, not a terrible transmitter. Monster Mojave, stay tuned. All right, battery is charged. We just need to get it installed. And let's go see what this thing can do. 100% stock. Let's see how fast she is. See if we can get a clean pass here. Full speed. Let's do that again. Oh, all right, one more pass. Let's see what we've got. 19 miles an hour. Is that faster than the other ones were? I can't remember. Let's see how it bashes. So far, I'm really impressed with this thing. It handles pretty well, but overall, it just doesn't feel like it has enough power. Let's fix that. And to do that, we're gonna be removing this stock brushed system, and we're gonna be installing a Hobbywing Quick Run 10BL60 ESC. You could use a 16BL30, but I think for just a few more dollars, the 10BL60 is a better option. This one doesn't have the fan on here, and with this small of a car, it's probably not necessary. To go along with that, we're gonna be using this fairly generic 3800 kV Keenso motor. Later in the video, I'll tell you exactly where I got these parts and how much they all cost, but for now, let's get this thing torn apart. This is gonna be pretty straightforward. We just need to remove this top plate. Arrma was really thoughtful when they designed these things, and these cars only have a few different size screws, and almost all of them have a 2mm head, which is larger than the screw heads on most of the competition, and makes these so much easier to work on. Now we just need to pull this top plate off. This can be very stiff, especially the first time you remove it, but just wiggle it back and forth, and it will come off eventually. And once that comes off, we can just take these two wires out. Oh, that's for next video. We're actually just gonna be leaving this 2-in-1 in here. It is the mount for the servo, and leaving it in here means one less part we have to buy. Next, we'll take this fan out. Then we need to pull the pinion and the motor mount off this stock motor. Because as you can see, one of the really nice things about this Keenso motor is it takes the stock mount and the stock pinion. So that's two more things you don't have to worry about buying. I've also soldered it to this 10BL60. Let's see how it's gonna fit. As expected, the motor fits perfectly, but this rib's gonna be in the way of mounting the ESC, so let's go ahead and get rid of it. The easiest way to do that is just take a pair of flush cutters, cut vertically down to the surface in several different places. You wanna make sure you get all the way down to the base. And then you can just take a pair of pliers and twist those pieces out. It usually leaves a pretty good finish. You might need to come back in and just clean that up to make that surface perfectly smooth though. And there we go, that should fit in there nicely. I'm gonna get this stuck down, let's get this cover put back on, then I'll show you the wiring we need to do. In order to make this work with the stock battery, we're gonna have to solder a different connector onto this ESC. I got these little EC2 connectors to make sure they're actually gonna be compatible. And unfortunately, no. Apparently these are not compatible like the IC5 and EC5 connectors are. Let's see if the pins work though. Okay, the pins are compatible. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and cut the ends off of this part of the connector and just have the bare pins sticking out. Since they're going into this connector, that won't be a problem. I did look online and you can get these IC2 connectors from Horizon. So if this works, which I'm a little skeptical about now that I've seen how large these wires are, you could just buy the IC2 connectors though. At that point, it may not be worthwhile to use this battery anymore, but we're experimenting, so let's find out. Let's go ahead and cut these flush. Again, I don't recommend doing this because now you can plug this connector in backwards. And we'll just desolder this nice and appropriate XT60. If you're gonna buy connectors, I always recommend getting genuine connectors. They're gonna cost you a little bit more, but they work so much better. AMAS makes really good connectors, so if you can get this brand of connector, I definitely recommend it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and not recommend you do this. These wires are too big for these pins, and while I'm committed to this experiment because I really wanna see how this battery works, this probably isn't gonna be the way to go. That being said, we're gonna give it a try anyway. All we need to do now is install the receiver. Obviously, we need a separate receiver because the built-in one here isn't going to work anymore. We are gonna be limited to where we can put the receiver because of the design of this body, but let's see if we can just tape it right here on top of the old one. Just gonna set this here and put the body on and see if it gets in the way. And no, it looks like we're good there. So we'll go ahead and put the receiver here. I'm a little bit nervous for the next video because there is not a lot of room in here. We just need to get this stuck down, connect the steering and ESC, and we're ready to see just how much better this is. Let's go find out. All right, guys, 2S brushless power. Let's see how much faster it is. It's definitely got more pep. Get another pass. Full throttle. Let's do one more. Full throttle. All right, let's see how fast that is. 27 miles an hour. That is a big improvement from 19. And don't forget, this is only on 2S. This ESC and motor can do 3S power. So there we go, guys. Brushless Mojave Grom on the cheap. How cheap? Well, to get 27 miles an hour out of this thing on 2S, we replaced the motor, ESC, and receiver, as well as putting some different connectors on the ESC. I decided to not upgrade the output cups because I wanted to see what this could take, and at least with these stock tires, the diffs were able to take the power no problem. So how much does this cost? Well, this Kinso 3800 kV motor that you can get on Amazon is about 23 bucks. You can get this 10BL60 ESC from all the usual suspects for about 35 bucks. And then how much the receiver costs just depends on which one you go with. I'm not going to factor the cost of the transmitter into this because you can use your transmitter on multiple different vehicles, but this FlySky Ant receiver was about $15. And then add an extra $1 or so for the connector because we used the stock battery. And you could take this truck from a sedate 19 miles an hour all the way up to 27 miles an hour on 2S, which is pretty fast for this little guy, for just under $75. That's not free, but I think that's about as cheap as you're going to be able to do and still have a reliable system. And don't forget, this thing can also do 3S. Let me know down in the comments if you want to see that. While you're down there, make sure you get subscribed because we're going to have some really cool videos coming up. So should you do this upgrade? Well, I'm kind of two minds on this. It's a lot faster, but these tires don't really have a ton of traction, and it does a lot more slipping and sliding with that extra power. So you have to be controlling the throttle a lot more to keep this thing under control. I think this thing's set up very well for the stock system and kind of gets overwhelmed with more power. That being said, when we go with even more power, we're going to be putting some bigger tires on here, making this thing more stable, and probably turning this thing into a rocket ship. But overall, what do I think about the car itself? This is a beautiful little car. It handles really well. I think it's my favorite Grom they've come out with so far. The extra weight makes it more stable, and as long as you don't mind its limitations, this is a really cool car, and I definitely recommend picking one up. I also recommend clicking that subscribe button, and I recommend one of these videos.